Cool. Okay. Just to kick things off here, we put together this presentation. We'll see where this goes, hoping to make this a series around economic empowerment and what that means from a holistic perspective. Obviously, there are a ton of things going on right now within the world, from COVID to the events of last week to even, I think earlier in the week, they'd announced that we had officially entered a recession. I don't know if that's ever official. This is something that I think a lot of us experienced around 2008. The millennial generation's been hit pretty hard by that kind of stuff in particular, but now the new generation is also experiencing that. That definitely makes this a relevant conversation for right now. And I think what's most important here is that we share personal stories around that. And really, I think a lot of the new graduates coming out, especially, are going to be as confused as we were coming into the 2008 recession. They're even having to graduate virtually. And, I know a couple kids that already had to do that. And then they're also coming into a workplace where, they've probably, just like we did, spent years and years hearing, you get this degree, you get this job, and that those two things match up like magic. It doesn't quite work like that. I think we all know that. I think they're going to, have questions and things that they want to work with. So with that, I wanted to hand it over to Jonathan to speak a little bit about, what economic opportunity and empowerment means to him, and really, what his story has been so far, both personally and professionally. So I'll kick it over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks. So it looks like, do you actually have the password to this? It looks like I have someone trying to get in, but there's a password.
Oh, I just submitted them. And they are joining now.
Okay.
There we go. Hey, Justine.
Hi.
Just working on making this a well-oiled machine right now. But yeah, you can continue, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Saquicili, born in Brooklyn, New York, now currently residing in Staten Island. And I think my educational background is I think we all have different walks of life. And for me, it's been pretty interesting. So since I was 8, I was always in the honors program up until I graduated high school. From there, I moved on to college, and I'm the first in my family to go to college. My mother is an immigrant, and I honestly, the whole college experience was interesting for me because, one, I wasn't in an honors program, but I was told by my high school advisor, I know you're shooting for SUNY schools, but maybe let's be a little bit more realistic and let's get you into a community college, which is a little disheartening. And actually, one of the funniest things for me, my first interaction with college was a letter from a private university in New York that said college is not for everybody. So when I got that note, I was like, well, I wasn't planning to apply to your college anyway, but like, okay, cool. Like, that's the reality of it, I guess. So I followed my best friend to college, and I was an international relations major at first. Then I became a Chinese major, graphic design major, and I really changed my major a lot before finally transferring and then realizing I have no idea what I want to do with my life. I have a Pell Grant. I received a scholarship for my grades, and I just felt pressured to, like, you have to graduate. You're the first one in the family. Like, you have to get a degree. You cannot fail. And all that really got to me where I ended up dropping out of college. And I said, you know what? My dream job, honestly, for a long time has been being a cashier. And I actually did become a cashier, and I liked it at first, but then I realized this isn't really a career. Somebody controls my schedule. I don't have as much of a say in what I want to do. And I joined a nonprofit, and through that nonprofit, I was kind of awakened, and I kind of tapped into my marketing passion, because just being surrounded by people who go to like NYU, Columbia, Harvard, MIT, I was like, you guys all let this one guy that's a cashier, college dropout, into this nonprofit. Like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? So I was able to get in, and then that's where I went back to school, graduated from a CUNY school, College Staten Island, and it was really while I was there that I gained a lot of experience, because our college wasn't, the marketing program at least wasn't very well built. It was very antiquated, and I had that flexibility to work with the dean and chairman to be able to build that out. So I owe it to the school, honestly, for letting them, for them letting me kind of do what I want, really, but then also being kept within the bounds of like, how is this going to progress our students? Um, and yeah, that's kind of where I was. Graduated from college, I got the opportunity to study abroad. And I remember actually in my last semester of college, right after Thanksgiving dinner, I sat at my table, pulled up my laptop, and I created a spreadsheet and started applying to colleges. So I actually, to jobs. So I actually went through over 420 job applications before I landed my first job on the publisher side, where I landed this tech role within advertising, got to know that, but then realized there wasn't much growth. And I did what many people told me, do not do. This is not what you should do. It's not conventional, which was I left after 10 months. So after 1 year of experience, I left, and a lot of people said, you're going to be branded as somebody who like flakes, you're leaving, like you don't stay, you're not dedicated. But honestly, I moved on to the advertising side, and I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. I've been in advertising now over 3.5 years. So 3 times longer than I did on the publisher side, and started on the media side. And for me, it was really not taking that traditional route. I wanted to become something more involved in tech. And I was very grateful for a manager who allowed me to grow and train me to become a product manager, because honestly, I was scared once again to be, in order for me to become a product manager, I need to spend $10,000 to go to product school. I need this certification, and then I'm allowed to be a product manager. And I didn't let that kind of really get into me, because my entire life, again, it's been just take a different route, try to go against the grain. And I'm here now. I'm involved in diversity and inclusion initiatives, and I'm having conversations with people like you that, and honestly, like younger Jonathan would have been like, what the heck? Like, how are you, like, you're being invited to these things. You're able to talk to SVPs, CEOs, like from the, like, the dream job of being a cashier to now, like totally different.
I love that. And, I think we talked a little bit about it earlier, but yeah, just everything you said there, I think reverberates with more people than we may even know. But maybe, people aren't as vocal about, their personal stories professionally, especially, where it relates to economics. And, there's, and we'll get into this later, but I think there's a certain thing about, if you express that you're from a certain economic environment professionally, especially in the East Coast, I'm just going to flat out say that there's a stigma around it, and I think that's something we need to really work hard at getting around, especially in somewhere like New York. Like there's so many expectations for what kind of background you come from, and there was a very cookie cutter approach to that in tech, especially, and I think that's improved over time, but there's still a ton of work to go. I'm still a bit critical personally of that kind of stuff, and so just to kind of tell my story a little bit here, maybe a little bit different format than this morning. That just starting out, I personally come from Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and it's interesting because there's not maybe as many people that come out to New York. There's plenty of people coming from UW-Madison, places like that, but maybe not as many people coming from a non-Big Ten school or something to that nature. But I think a lot of people are familiar with this whole narrative around the Rust Belt, and I think that there's a lot of miscommunication about what that means, and I think that there's a lot of uh, even stereotypes about what that represents. And I'm just going to speak to that quickly. Everybody can kind of do their own research on that level. Um, and I'm going to do a quick screen share here. Okay, cool. So for something like the Rust Belt, it's a term that's really been thrown back and forth, but I think really what it means is there's just this gap in economic opportunity, and I think that it pervades throughout the South as well. And it does not just touch white people; it touches everybody from every section, and that that what you find, and what I found growing up in the Midwest was you even think of cities of 500,000 people as big, and you come to find out that they're not that big. But there's like a urban versus rural divide there, and oftentimes everybody's making similar wages and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I think one of the things that I'd taken from that personally, when I was just doing some research on this myself, there's an article in Time that came out, and just underline our collective ignorance about the Rust Belt is getting dangerous. And one of the callouts in there, some important facts: many Rust Belt cities have minority populations that statistically outpace those in other places of the country. And the largest per capita Muslim population in the United States is here in Dearborn, Michigan. With so much emphasis placed on the manufacturing sector, many overlook the largest employers in the region: hospitals, retailers, institutions of higher education. Of the handful of cities in the United States that support an Orthodox Jewish population, many are in the Rust Belt. A century ago, the region's cities were often populated primarily by non-native English speakers. For example, in 1900, over 75% of the residents of Cleveland, Ohio were foreign-born or first-generation immigrants. To sum up such a diverse region with few adjectives, or a rags to riches story of exceptionalism with a message of individualism at its core, is both misleading and dangerous. So I think that plays into that narrative a little bit as well. But that's just to give a little bit of background on that. And I think that it's changed in over time. I grew up in various suburbs and neighborhoods of Milwaukee, and it had its ups and downs. And one of the biggest struggles I've encountered in my life so far is having a bipolar father. And I think that whatever situation affects you at home, there's deep things that come with that, and especially if it's disruptive to your home environment. It could be anything. It could be any number of things, and that's something that is maybe not accounted for in either a school or a professional environment, and the ways that that holds you back, either just plainly by distracting you or by affecting you economically. And I know we'd already talked about this a little bit, Jonathan, but basically, with my father, he'd been able to sustain himself, over my time growing up, at least, and had decent jobs, copy technician, which was something that made decent money and whatnot. But overall, that he was fiscally irresponsible, that we never had enough money. Because of that, he'd go off in spending sprees, and points of manicness. And even so, my mother was in childhood education, and that was something that I found to be uplifting, and that I've carried with me, and I still greatly admire educators for that reason. Teachers still don't make a lot of money, and so she actually had started out in Easter Seals, and I guess she left there because she was working with certain like veteran, and ended up with a broken nose out of that. So she's actually been through the school of hard knocks that way. But then throughout her career, she's worked in Head Start, which is a program to help oftentimes low-income families that are having issues paying for preschool or kindergarten or something to that degree. And I think I've taken a lot from that as well in that experience. Also with an organization called UMOS, which also works with Latino families closely. And then later on into her career, she also got into education centers like childcare centers, and later on a nanny, and then ultimately a home health care aide, which pays not so well. I'll just straight up say that. But she's been great at being caring, and I think that that's something in a professional environment that everybody needs to some degree. But anyway, so we were at a point when I was younger that she even had to go over to the neighbors to ask for food because of my dad's spending and irresponsible financial stuff and things like that. And soup to nuts, I ended up moving out of Milwaukee for a while to a more rural environment, my family, and all of that stuff was going on then. My parents got a divorce when I was about 11, and my dad ended up keeping the house. But I was still kind of existing in that environment with bipolar disorder, and there's also like a legacy of abuse there as well, and on his side, and I credit him for that. And it took me a long time to kind of look at that in a mature way, and you just kind of move forward with that. So in high school, it was a big distraction. I ended up getting put in, they call it various things in other schools, like a homeroom that's separate from other students, and they'll call them troubled students or something like that. And I was lucky enough to have some teachers in there that would kind of represent me and kind of act as mentors and role models. And that's something that I'd never really experienced before. It ended up being very helpful. One of those guys, his name is Mr. Powell. He came from an interesting background himself. He was Shoshone Native American. He ended up being adopted by a Black family on the south side of Milwaukee, and grew up, and then he ended up working a bunch of menial jobs. He was like even a garbage guy for a while and a bunch of other stuff. But he came with a very realistic perspective, and I think that really helped me. And it was tough love. He's just like, you're not going to make it to college if you keep acting the way that you are, and you have potential. And he believed in that. And I think that was a big driver. And I guess I related to him a lot at the time as well, because I was really into like punk rock and stuff like that. And he was the cool teacher. He had like a black flag tattoo and all this other stuff. But I really looked up to him. And then I eventually did make it to college. And I just had a really great relationship with him, the way that drove that. And I ended up pursuing what I was passionate about that way, which, it's interesting to hear from your side, Jonathan. You looked at design as well. I think that it's had here and there career prospects. Advertising has changed a lot in that time, and it's more data oriented and stuff. But I think what inspired me to do that was my grandma was actually a graphic designer, ironically on my dad's side, and she did that in the 70s. She'd use all those like French curves and like rulers and pencils and like, this is crazy,
Old school way, yeah.
Yeah. So I graduated around the time of the recession. And like many graduates, I just didn't find many career prospects then. And so I had just, considered my options at that time. And I had a cousin, and, there's different parts of every family. I think, that side was definitely more economically advantaged, but one of my favorite cousins on that side had moved to New York, and she was living in East Village at that time. So it happened that I took a trip to Boston with some friends, and she said, "Hey, come down. Yeah, it's at the Chinatown bus down. It only will take you 4 hours, you know."
Yeah.
And that was like my first time in New York, and I just loved it. And I remember not being able to sleep that night, and it was just a buzz of excitement. And I'm sure like other people have similar stories like that. But needless to say, 6 months later, she said, "Hey, if you want to come crash on my couch, look for jobs. You just graduated, check it out." So I did. I left my car at home and left everything there. And our deal was, "Hey, you have a month. Find yourself a place in Brooklyn, and then I'm kicking you out." Tough love.
Definitely
And
tough love.
somehow I managed to, and I moved there with a job. I was uh, a waiter at Buffalo Wild Wings in Atlantic Terminal. Um, it's that's a whole other story for another time. But like it landed with something at least, and um, I slept on her hardwood floor, for a month until I found a place. She had a wedding guest that was staying there, and she said, "Oh, can Alero have the couch?" She lost her passport, and she's got to figure stuff out, and said, "All right." But anyway, so I think from a professional level that I worked past that since then. New York was a lot to adapt to, and there's been a lot of changes within advertising. So that could be a whole other a little piece there, and we'll talk more about that. But that's, I think, my story till now. I think everybody's had to evolve a little bit with the changes that have happened in advertising with technology in general. So I had, some things that you might want to discuss here. Um, and I can kick this over to you, Jonathan. So just with your family members' economic challenges, and I'm happy to get into more that happened with my family as well. What kind of things did you see your family undergo economically?
Yeah, I think there's a lot coming from a parent of immigrants, um, having very little to like no financial literacy. Uh, my mom doesn't, I think she completed middle school or she stopped halfway before coming to the US. So some of the things we faced as a family, and I think this will come as a surprise. I see that I think 5 of the folks here are actually my team members. So what'll come as a surprise is actually I was homeless at one point. Um, in high school, in college, I remember one day I took up one of those summer jobs where a lot of like I think a lot of Asian students might kind of resonate with this, where basically your parents put you in like an after school program and a Saturday or summer like weekend program. So I was the only Latino teacher that taught a majority of Asian students, and this was my summer job basically. One morning, my mom told me like, "Hey, you need to pack your bags. Like, I promise you, I'll have a place for you." but pack your bags just in case because we're getting evicted. And I went to work that day, and in the back of my mind, I kept thinking like, I have to go through my entire day teaching like English, science, math, writing, reading, and a bunch of other subjects. And also, I have to play with the kids during playtime. But in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna have a home to go to after this. I was actually really sad when I left work. My mom was across the street with my gym bag, and then told me, "I'm sorry I let you down," and gave me my gym bag and said, "You have to find somewhere to go." So I actually ended up. It took me about an hour. I was calling a bunch of friends like, "Hey, can I crash at your place? I don't have a place to stay." And I don't know. I don't remember if it was a week or a month. I just remember it was a long time before I was able to see my family again. But we all essentially split up. We either found family. Well, at the time, we didn't want to tell family what happened to us because of just, I guess, ego and just saving face. So we didn't tell our family that we were homeless. So basically, I just stayed with a friend. Some of my siblings stayed with a friend. Then I found out the core of my family lived in a park for a while. So I was really rough to. It was really rough, honestly, to kind of like go through that and then just continue to go to work and play with kids and like educate them and teach them. Your parents are paying like all this money for me to educate you, and just keep that mindset. Um, so yeah, like that really taught me honestly that like I've been at rock bottom. I've been homeless. Like to me, what's the like what do I have to lose essentially? So for me, I try to go hard on whatever I do. Right now I'm working on a couple of side projects. I'm consulting on the side as well, and I'm really passionate about diversity and inclusion at work. And I really try to push the limit, because if you're not passionate about anything or you're doing something half-assed, it's going to show. So again, I guess just being there, knowing what is the worst that can happen for me is pushing me just to keep on going.
That's a really good perspective, and I really appreciate you sharing that, Jonathan. I think it takes a lot to actually express that and come out with that, and I think it's healthy for everybody to create that kind of visibility on a professional level too. Um, and there needs to be more conversation about these types of things. Um, and I can remember with my family just uh, trying to find a way to concentrate, and to actually get work done when there's just this constant cloud of negativity and beyond the financial stuff, and like it's just a huge weight on a kid's shoulders with how much they already have to deal with, just on a basis of going to school and getting the work done. You wouldn't think that would be a difficult thing, but when you have that extra layer on things, it just affects things a lot. Even I had a friend who said, somebody in their office, respectively, he's an intern right now, but he's had to go back to a neighborhood where he just like sees his friends within the past year, like two or three of his friends have actually died. And, that's something that, like, I can't imagine myself what that kind of environment would be like. Everybody, lives in a different thing, but it's like just hearing that, was a real wake up call for me as well. Um, that other people are really, taking these issues at heart. And then, like just in terms of, when you come from a lower income background, and I guess I did forget to mention, I went to school on a Pell Grant as well, and various scholarships, but that there's that level of it, and then there's also like, when you don't necessarily know where you're going to live, when you're bouncing from place to place, when you don't have much reserves on your own. I know my family ended up in the EBT line often, and dealing with those kind of welfare programs, there's just a certain amount of bureaucracy you have to get through, and you have to press on it too, or you might not get those benefits. And that's not just a checkbox for you, that's your survival. So I think there's a lot of that there involved as well.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you mentioned that because with like COVID-19 happening now, actually, I've shared this with a couple of folks, but my mom actually tested positive. We were on day 11. She got tested 11 days ago. She tested positive, and we got the results after 9 days. So we're restricted into like how much we can move in terms of going to work. I'm the only one in my family that can work from home, which is a privilege. It's a huge benefit. But another thing, like during these times, is because a lot of my family members, or at least the main breadwinner, I guess, lost his job. We've been getting food, honestly, from food banks, Salvation Army, and like just trying to keep afloat because our number one priority is paying rent. And when like family members start losing their ability to contribute to rent, it is a lot harder. So even now, like as a working professional, like I have to rely on that because although I have my income, it has to be split amongst like the family members and try to cover what everyone else isn't able to cover.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like just piecing that kind of stuff together, really, it is so reliant on one person usually, and it has to fall to them. I think for me, that person oftentimes was my mother, um, because at a certain point, like while I was in high school, my dad just kind of gave up. He lost his job. He let his illness overtake him. Um, and, as an adolescent, you don't have much control over what your family situation looks like, how you're doing. That's all seems like a random thing, and sometimes you ask yourself, like, how do I find myself in this position, and other people find themselves in theirs. But I do think you learn over time to just look past those things. And uh, it's often repeated, but I think a phrase that's helped me a lot is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. um, so there's that kind of stuff as well. And with that too, and on the topic you mentioned there, there's and uh, you know just how COVID is affecting everybody, um, and just how that's come about so quickly. um, I guess, maybe perspective from your workplace right now. And, I did want to caveat before, like, in this conversation does not represent the view of our employees, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so, uh, but just in terms of how you've seen new graduates dealing with that maybe, interns that in the industry, have you seen a lot of adverse effects from that side as well with younger people that you know?
Yeah, so I actually have my sister graduated from college with a degree in criminal justice, and she was actually supposed to intern at our company, and her offer got rescinded along with every other intern in our company. But I also held a webinar for the recent graduates at my college, and a lot of them honestly are confused, they're scared, they're nervous, they don't know what to make of the situation because essentially they were supposed to be one graduating class essentially fighting for a job, but now it's somewhat delayed where now they may potentially have to fight with the class of 2021 to get a job, and there isn't really that much, at least the way that the news is putting it, there aren't that many jobs available. There are businesses that are closing and there are jobs that are just going away. um, a lot of them are nervous, they're scared, they're looking for guidance, and they're looking for resources on how to prepare. I got my degree in XYZ. What do I do now? Like, how can I stand out against other applicants? So it is a very confusing time. I do hope that a lot of them understand they're not alone. I've seen a lot of campaigns and initiatives online where people are providing volunteer time to go through resume reviews, do any one-on-ones, just informational sessions. And I think we're really seeing the positive side of people in our industry where our main goal is to essentially like spend money for our clients and like spam people with ads, but we're also using our time to help bring up the next generation of marketers.
Love that. And that's a great point too, you know, and there's such a path there in getting from point A to point B. Um, so as it relates to professional opportunities, um, I've drawn into this in a question myself before as well, is uh, with internships, with you know, looking at the kind of universities and schools that people went to on their resume, and you know, you can answer this how you like, is and I have my own take on it as well. Do you think that that requirement sometimes holds back kids that went through economic adversity, and that, you know, yes, there are kids that went through extreme economic adversity, and I can give some examples of that in a bit as well. Um, but you know, does that affect their ability to actually even get into at the base level to an internship?
Yeah, I think it does. I've had these conversations with a lot of people, and I do get mixed responses. But I think that companies putting in like their number one requirement, sometimes I see it in the first 5 bullet points, must be a graduate of a top university. And I think just reading that statement alone, if you attend a community college, if you attend a public college or a city university, automatically you feel, well, they're looking for top talent. That's not me. My college isn't well known. My university isn't prestigious. There's no one famous that graduated, so therefore I don't qualify for this, and automatically you withdraw yourself. And I think that's very unfair for the student who may have had to come up with their own resources to make through it, get themselves through college. For myself, I know that graduating from the CUNY system, a lot of us have limited budgets. We don't have everything that we need. We don't have a robust alumni network that can like donate millions of dollars. And I think honestly, companies should get rid of it, because it does stop students from applying, and it holds them back because they tie their worth to the degree of the institution that they got it from. And honestly, if I've learned anything in advertising, is that you don't need to graduate. You don't even have to have a degree in marketing. You can have a degree in English and you can still like make your way up to like a director or something. Like I know a lot of people that had degrees in political science and English and like humanities, and they're all doing really well in advertising. And that just goes to show like you just have to get crafty and very just you have to be very crafty, honestly. Like fake it till you make it and just keep going from there.
Love it, and definitely agree there. You know, and it's funny that you mentioned that phrase, "fake it till you make it." I think that you know, you can take that literally, but I think that, you know, for students, you know, professionals that have come from, you know, an economically adverse environment, oftentimes we do kind of have to camouflage ourselves and, you know, mix in with the crowd a little bit. I know I have for years, and you know, just now I'm finding a venue for this, and finding that there's people with shared viewpoints like you. Uh, and one of the things I wanted to highlight there as well, on a non-fake it till you make it front, is this organization is called Year Up. And I think they really deserve a shout out. I met some of their graduates at tech events, you know, and things of that nature. And it's the only program I've really seen that's similar to this out there. So they will actually take students that, you know, might come from working a minimum wage job. You know, they don't really look at your schooling, and they work with a lot of corporate partners on, and there's quite a list here. I think might be able to pull that up quick. Is just this whole list here. I mean, they have Accenture, Amazon, Bank of America, Glassdoor. There's a whole list of different companies on there, and I think that this is just really unique in the kind of opportunity that they represent that way. And this thought just occurred to me too. I think it would be helpful if maybe more companies within advertising would get more involved in programs like this. I think that there's a lot of walk before talk, talk before walk when it comes to, actually doing something about these kind of, adverse issues. And, that might be a great first step. There's these advertisements running, and there's, you don't want just lip service, you want actual action, and this could be a great way to do that as well. And another thing that I've noticed too is when you are looking at internships and things like that, I personally found myself bumped around so much in the recession that I didn't end up doing one that's serious. And then in the Milwaukee area, there wasn't really opportunities for anything like that. I know people I graduated with that have been working the same job for like 10 years. That doesn't happen in New York. uh, so I think that there should be a way to bridge that gap, and especially where there's a lot of internships out there still that are unpaid. So for those, if it's unpaid, what's your barrier to giving some of these kids a chance? And then if it is paid, what are their criteria in considering kids for those certain positions? And then also, like, is an internship really a modern thing that's useful? And that could have a lot of answers to it, but a lot of people have brought up things like apprenticeships and something where you can learn on the job, and I think that's what an internship is supposed to be. But maybe paid internship programs start to be structured a little bit more like that.
Yeah, so actually I wanted to backtrack a bit. I've actually never heard of Europe, but there is an equivalent that I know that a lot of people within my agency's network have come through is co-op. So co-op, typically you graduate from a city university here in New York, and if you make under a certain amount of money, you go through this apprenticeship program where they teach you. There's an analytics track and a digital media track and a search track. So you learn those skills, and they do a lot of work to be able to get you in front of talent like my agency, my network. There's also our like the big four advertising agencies, and you also get to meet with Google. They actually sponsor this talent match program. So there are more and more programs I see, but to your point, I do think companies do need to get involved. With this.
Yeah.
I'm actually forgetting what was your question. Sorry about that.
Oh, we can keep moving on. I think we got a good flow going here. Yeah, and I think I've seen some similar programs there with Google, participated in a couple of them. And also, I believe Grow with Google is free right now. If you go
Yes.
on that URL, just type in Grow with Google into Google search, and it'll come up with some of those programs. So I think they're being a great leader that way, and offering those kind of programs. So we got about 15 minutes or so left here. I just wanted to talk about one or two more topics, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. It sounds like a lot of people in this room would have some more things to say here. So I think just the other one I wanted to touch on was these, just how some of these predatory for-profit colleges, take advantage of kids out there that might want a degree and they don't really know a point to get from point A to point B, and obviously that's a pretty controversial issue, and it's it's something that I see within advertising. I see ads for these for-profit colleges being run where you obviously know that it's a scam and they're defrauding kids out of money and whatnot. What's your take on that?
I want to be careful on how I say this, but I kind of don't understand how people fall for it. I mean, like again, first generation to go to college. I was in high school where we were taught, there's private colleges that you can go to. There's the CUNY system and the SUNY system. So a lot of times where I see people fall for this, I often wonder, like, have you considered a community college? Did you ever look at, what is a nearby city college that you're going to attend, or a state college? So I think, so I don't want to like put the blame on the victim, but also I think there needs to be more thorough research, honestly, on how you're picking your institution. Do things make sense? And then honestly, I think being a New Yorker, I'm always skeptical about anything that's presented. So literally anything you tell me, I always attach the word scam to the end of it and I Google search it. So if you're telling me like, yeah, type in a university scam, and if I see a bunch of articles, then that's a red flag to me. Like, I'm not applying to you. Like, I don't care how you're selling me, what scholarships you're promising me. I see a whole bunch of scam articles. Like, I'm out. You can go get somebody else.
Love it. Yeah, that was a good answer too. And I think that's a unique perspective on it. And I know that with some kids I've worked with in mentoring programs, that they said they'd almost fallen prey to those type of things. And I mean, I'm glad they didn't. And you definitely want something that's legitimate. And I think that that's where, personally, and this is just my personal viewpoint, is there's a lot of companies out there that could stand right now to take the lead in, reaching out to these communities. And, it doesn't matter whether it's rural, whether you're in a city like New York. There's very talented kids out there that maybe aren't getting the time of day because they're not getting some of the considerations we talked about earlier. People work very hard to get where they're at, but definitely sounds like it should be just within those criteria, at least, of consideration.
Yeah, for sure.
So with that, for the last 10 minutes, maybe open up the floor here, and I'm going to unmute everybody. Hopefully this will work. And everybody can feel free to ask any questions they like, give any thoughts.
Hey, Jonathan.
Hey.
This is Ashley. I was able to, stop on by. First of all, I want to say thank you both to Adam and Jonathan for being so transparent and sharing both of your stories with us here today. I think this was very inspirational to learn more about both of you as individuals and your struggles. And I think people who weren't able to join and does see the recording of this will find some kind of inspiration, especially if they're in a similar situation and they probably are like in their mind saying like, I can't because of XYZ. I think you both have shown that it is possible to be successful despite multiple barriers and obstacles that you come across, and that you can achieve great things. I also think that another important point to raise when we talk about the colleges, because I'm also another skeptical New Yorker, I would say when you're looking at programs as a college student, it's important to check the accreditation of the college. I feel like that's something else that people overlook, and that can hurt you in the long run when you're trying to get a job and you graduate as, say, a nurse, and it turns out that your program is not accredited. Hospitals are going to be hesitant to hire you because it means that your college did not follow, XYZ points of standards to bring about a class of knowledgeable individuals. So they're going to question your expertise. So it's always important to check the accreditation and make sure that all their things are up to specs, up to date, so that doesn't, like, you know, hurt you and your aspirations and your goals in the future. And that's pretty much all I want to say.
Yeah, I learned about the accreditation process because my college actually recently got accredited to be part of the larger like US organization for business schools. So we originally just had a business program, and then we transitioned to actually having a business school. So that's a good point, Ashley. I actually never, like, I didn't know about that. I just assumed, I guess then I understand how people fall for it, where they're like, oh, it's a college. Cool, I'm good. Like, you're offering a degree, you're an institution, you're valid.
And that, my friend, is the trap.
For sure.
Accurate. And then did anybody else around the room have any questions or anything they wanted to add? Cool. Well, I guess we will end out about 5 minutes early. I wanted to personally thank everybody who joined here.
Oh, I think we have someone's actually trying to talk, but trying
Oh,
to
is it
fiddle with their
HZ?
mic. Yeah.
Maybe try a different audio option. I guess Zoom isn't perfect sometimes. I'm going to try mute and unmute. Give that a shot. HZ, you hear us? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Cannot hear anything. I do want to add one point just to buy some time, I guess, is where you spoke about taking the Chinatown bus. One fun fact that folks might not know, I actually worked those buses. Chinatown, they have those Chinatown buses that go from point A to point B, but they actually also have tour buses. So I was actually the only Latino tour guide out of 100 Asian tour leaders. And I did tours from one, actually I never had a 1 day, but I had 2 to 5 days from New York all the way up to Quebec.
Wow. And that sounds like an adventure. I could see your face light up when I mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, training was actually interesting. They tell you, like, they told me, hey, you're going to do a ride along. We'll teach you the process.
Right.
And then when I realized I was going into the Holland Tunnel, I was like, wait, what? What's the destination? Like, oh, the first night you go to Washington, D.C. So once I got into Jersey, I asked, like, hey, like, at what point do we turn around and go home? They're like, you're not. This is a 3-day tour. I was like, wait, but I didn't, like, I literally only have this. This, what I am wearing is what I have. They're like, oh, well, you're just going to have to buy clothing as you go along then.
Yeah.
Food is provided, but clothing, like, you have to buy on the way. So that was like an interesting adventure.
Yeah, so they wouldn't even purchase it for you.
No. Again, also, this comes with, like, I guess what we're facing now in the world on discrimination and all of that. Being the only Latino, I had, I think, 2 years of Chinese under my belt, so I did understand some Chinese, but people would, like, always refer to me as the foreigner or the big guy or the big bear because I'm a big dude. So they would have nicknames and they were like try to share because we were very in a sales role.
Right.
So there were times where I realized I would get like the 3-4 star hotels, and then all of a sudden, because I didn't speak Chinese fluently, I ended up at like a Motel 6 or a Super 8. I'm like, wait, this is not where I was supposed to be originally.
Oh, wow.
So it was also like another interesting learning experience.
Yeah, that's an interesting story in and of itself. Oh, I see HG got into us here. Hey, John and Adam, thank you for sharing your experience. My questions are, do you think remote work will negatively affect underrepresented candidates? If so, what do you think can be done to close the gap?
Um, I do think actually that this can be a little tough. I've had this conversation actually as well, thinking like when this whole pandemic happened, I told my mom like, hey, can you imagine if we were in the same situation we were a couple of years ago where we had to rely on you to be the main breadwinner, rely on you to like feed us, clothe us, and also go to work for us. And I did think about how in the past, like in my home, we only had one laptop and I had to do my papers on it along with my siblings doing all their homework. So I do think it can be tough for folks that may not have stable internet access. And I saw that there were companies providing free internet to people. I know that the elementary school system here in New York, there was a program for students to get laptops delivered to them or even just iPads so they can do the minimum work. But I think in terms of the workforce, that'll be a little tough, especially if you can't afford to buy your own laptop or you can't afford to pay for internet.
Yeah, that's a really great point too. And I think even within my workplace, I've seen people that have had issues with internet connections, and if that times 10, with other things that relate to that, and just having your home set up. Like it seems like a lot of workplaces out there will give a laptop and a keyboard, but everything else for your setup, you're pretty much on your own. So there's that viewpoint, and then I think that there's the case I mentioned earlier of the kid who had to go back to his neighborhood in Brooklyn and work there, and he's still trying to work towards getting into school. And luckily the company in question had agreed to send him to school for at least his first or maybe even the whole year. uh, and so that's a rare case, I think. But in the meantime, he has to deal with his home environment, and just constantly not even feeling safe to get his work done. I mean, you didn't think it would be a tall order, in any other way. But I can even relate that right now to my own brother, who I will say, recently lost his job. And, it's something that I think a lot of people in the Midwest are no stranger to. Everybody from every walk, just in the way that things have gone over there. And, he's done a variety of things: logistics, auto mechanics, things like that. Um, and his girlfriend actually works in a hospital, helping to clean hospital rooms, and it's COVID infected patients. And there's that portion as well, in that you might be inadvertently, with the workplace policies and stuff, you might inadvertently be putting some of those individuals at risk. So there's definitely a huge conversation to be had there as well.
For sure.
So we're at time. You think we want to end out?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate it, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for sparing some of your time for this.
Thank
Thank you both for the great conversation.
Thank you.
See you guys for the next one.
For sure.